This is verse 12 of the 12th chapter of the Gospel of Matthew. Jesus is correcting some of the misunderstandings of the Sabbath that were common in the Jewish world of the first century, especially among those who held themselves out as experts in the law. Jesus responding to accusations that are being brought against him for supposedly working on the Sabbath, healing a man with a withered hand, gathering food from a field. All of this, of course, was the fodder for accusations by the enemies of Jesus. And he now has asked them the rhetorical question, if you had a sheep that fell into a ditch, even on the Sabbath, you wouldn't regard it as an infraction to get that sheep out of there, not choking on the restrictive definitions of the law to prevent doing good for even an animal. And then it leads him then to the discussion here. Really the best way to think about this is probably to take the sentence in its normal order. So I'm going to start with anthropos, the subject, a man, and then we have diaphore. From diaphero literally means to carry through, to carry something through, to ferry it through, if you will. So a man, this notion of carrying through means to press out into the lead, and that gives rise to the notion of being better. So a man is better would be the idea. Third person singular, present active indicative. A man is better. Takes the genitive then, probatu, than a sheep. So a man is better than a sheep. That's the fundamental idea. Postpositive un here. And then the poso, it's kind of hard to translate, but it's actually called a interrogative pronoun. It's in the dative here, and so we're going to render it something like to what extent, if you can kind of see the dative sense of it. So to what extent is a man better than a sheep? That's the basic idea. Rhetorical question, obviously the answer is not necessary because it's so painfully obvious that if it is appropriate to rescue a sheep on the Sabbath, then how much more is it to rescue a man? And then Jesus reaches this coordinating conjunction here. So is the way we'd normally render it. Existen, back to the idea of what is lawful. This means it is lawful. It is lawful. So tois, sabasen, with respect to Sabbaths, in connection with the practice on the Sabbath. This is in the plural dative. So it is lawful with respect to Sabbaths. Kalos, indeclinable adverb, means well, rendered many good. Same idea, poiein, to do, from poieo, to make or to do. So on the Sabbath it is lawful to do things that are good. He's, of course, revising rather dramatically the understanding of the Sabbath, making it probably more consistent with the Old Testament rule rather than the rabbinic tradition, but even at that, more or less overruling some aspects of Sabbath keeping from the Old Testament, which was a common practice of his. It's appropriate to do good. This, of course, has given rise in Christian history to the practice of using the Sabbath as a day off from regular work to go out and do good works, to visit people, to provide for them, to care for them, to be quite industrious, really, in many ways on the Sabbath, not viewing it so much as a day of rest from all activity, but a day of rest from ordinary wage-earning activity, to go out and do things that are in the spirit of Christian charity.